Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Erudition Network. Welcome to the Erudition Network. My name is Eddie Phillips. This is the Erudition Network Interactive Black History and Knowledge session. We are on at a different time. So if you didn't get the memo or didn't get the advertisement that we put out to let you know that the time was changing, I apologize to you, but we are on at a later time. One of the reasons why we're doing this is I have noticed that we've had a decline in the amount of people who were able to interact with the interactive. And because the interactive program is exactly that, it is an interactive program, I wanted to do something where we could, let's give people the opportunity. I know some of us are older and we like to go to bed around this time. If you're in the Central Time Zone, it's 8 o'clock in the evening. You like, oh, I just want to rest. But I really wanted to make sure that we were getting enough participation and people joining us for the broadcast. A lot of people really did ask me, could we do it a little later, because they weren't able to catch the program because they were getting off work or they were still at work. And, I always trust in the audience and the desire to want to interact. So I was happy to oblige that, change my schedule around a little bit in order to make that happen. So that's what we're doing tonight. All right, who we got in here? I see 3 people. Sean Anthony, good to see you. Good to see you. I'm happy that you're joining us. Teddy is in the background. So he's here too. Eric, did I suggest a different time? I think you were one of the ones, Eric, that you were one of many that suggested a different time. And so I'm happy that we were able to do that. Tina, good to see you. Happy that you're here. I don't know why you got a monkey wrench above your name. Oh, probably because you are part of the Erudition team and you have the ability to edit and do things. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Why you got that monkey wrench on here? Is that a threat? But it's so much going on. I'm gonna try to touch on some things tonight, but as I have always said with this program, this is interactive, and so we want to make it as interactive. Why does it have to be? Why does it have to be a monkey tench? Autocorrect strikes again. Yes, I understand the typos. No, tonight I there's so much going on. I don't know if you heard. O.J. Simpson died. I guess I have to say, hey, Mike, good to see you, brother. Thank you for being here. I guess I have to say something about O.J. on a historical note, because let me tell you, one thing I will say about the O.J. Simpson fiasco was that I think the major reason why people were so angry about OJ, I've always felt this way, was not necessarily the possibility, or some people say the eventuality that he did kill his wife, but more so that they had built OJ up, right? OJ, Sean Anthony said what? Yes, OJ Simpson died. Um, they had built this man up, right? Um, he used to do Hertz commercials running through the airport. He was the juice, as Mike is saying, and everybody loved OJ Simpson. And it was up until his wife and the young man that was with her, Goldman, were killed, that all of a sudden, right, it became a big issue. But let me give another historical perspective here too. One of the things that is not often talked about in the O.J. Simpson case is the fact of the racism of the police department. And one of the reasons people always say, well, he got off and he committed murder. Here's the reason why it became an issue. Even though we talk about early DNA and everything else, it became an issue because people had access to O.J. Simpson's home. People had access to O.J. Simpson's blood because O.J. Simpson had had domestic issues with his wife. He had had alcohol issues where they had taken blood from him. So whenever we have a reasonable doubt, right, the jury has to lean towards that reasonable doubt. And that's what happened. There was an officer named Mark Furman who jumped over a wall, went into O.J. Simpson's home without a warrant. This man had tapes, and there are tapes and tapes and tapes and tapes of him talking about setting up black men, holding guns to black men's mouths, beating them, getting away with murder, harassing black female officers, bragging about the violations of the law that hours and hours of tapes that were never released, not fully. And the journalist, or I'm sorry, the screenwriter who was writing a screenplay and was interviewing Mark Furman, she felt the need to turn in some of those tapes, but she didn't turn in them all. And only within the last few years has she really come out and let you really hear what Mark Furman was saying. And now the jury got access to all of this. Now, I'm not here to argue O.J. Simpson's innocence. That I don't care to do. He was a despicable human being in many other ways. But here's the reality, right? We have to talk about O.J. because what happened with this country is majority of white Americans went crazy when O.J. Simpson was found to not be guilty. They couldn't accept it. This one case. They forgot all about the Scottsboro boys. They forgot all about the lynchings and murders and false trials and everything else that had been done before the civil rights movement, after slavery. They forgot all about all of that. They forgot about the red record of Ida B. Wells that talks about how they would go in and summarily apply justice upon black men who hadn't done anything and were accused of things that wasn't even possible for them to do. Some weren't even in the town in which they were being accused of the crime, but they just happened to be the wrong ninja in the wrong place at the wrong time. We forget all about that. That one case of someone being found innocent drove them crazy. And we can look further as we look at the other cases and things that people have been doing for quite, even in recent times, and getting away with it. Yes, they forgot about Rodney King. They forgot about Rodney King. They forgot about a lot of things. So I don't want to spend too much time on OJ. But I want to make that point to you that, again, it is part of history in a very despicable way, because it showcases to us, right? Money. He had money, and a lot of people, oh, he had money, he could get off. But there are a lot of criminals who've had money, blue collar and whatever, and they got away. And if they did get away, they were put into a minimal security jail. They were allowed to spend a little bit of time in jail and get out and keep all of the money and whatever it is that they stole. There are many ways to kill people. You don't have to knife them. You can starve them. You can push them into poverty. And many of these people have done that. Many of these people did that. So I wanted to touch on that briefly tonight. I didn't want to spend, like I said, a lot of time on that. But I definitely wanted us to cover that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a group of you here, about 5 of you here. I'm going to open the floor to you first. Before I get into anything, I do have something I want to talk about tonight. But I want to open the door to you all to ask a question, present a question about history, to put something in the chat that we could discuss, that we could talk about, and we can further our learning on. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what time period it's from. I want us to do that so we can grow our knowledge and understanding. Anybody got anything other than OJ? Because I think we just covered enough of OJ. Put my camera down a little bit. I look like I'm talking high up. What Hamas post? I don't know what post you're talking about, Eric. And I'm happy to discuss it, but I need to have a better idea of what it is that you're talking about. While you guys are thinking of that, let me bring up something else that I saw today. So I was on Facebook, and I got a post from somebody who sent me a post. I think it was Mama Michelle sent me a post. Somebody had posted something else. You know how that works with social media. And the person, to me, made a very weird statement, and I wanted to address that on the show tonight because I thought it was pretty weird, and it also didn't give a lot of factual history. So I wanted to talk about that. Basically, people were arguing this whole thing again of, was Jesus of dark skin? Was he white? And then I saw that somebody posted that there were no white people before 1681. I'm gonna repeat that because I want to confront that. The person in response said there were no white people before 1681. Now, I hunted down why this person said that. And the professor who put this out, a white professor who put this out, her point was the anti-miscegenation laws. So she's going with the idea that in 1681 was the first time legally we saw the reference of someone referencing someone being white. But I would challenge that historically and say that before that, people thought they didn't call themselves white, they thought they were European. And I would even say that when Columbus came, at that point it became the others. Everybody else before that were, I don't know, you were Italian, you were this, you were that. But after the arrival in Africa and even going into the New World, people started to reference people as the other, the heathens, right? So if you see it that way, then you start to understand that that didn't make any sense. 1681 doesn't make any sense. So I think that, we have to be careful with what we get in history and what we look at. This Professor Jacqueline Batalara, I understand her approach, but it's wrong. And she's trying to be sensational by saying that there are no white people before 1681. She might want to go back a couple of thousand years, 40,000 to 50,000 years, and realize that Cheddar Man and different ones who went into the Italian peninsula and went into there, that is when we started to see migration going into it. And if you were to get my book, if you have not gotten it, you will see that I talk about the Novesians, and I talk about the Neanderthals, and I talk about how all of that out of Africa migration affected human beings, because you had interbreeding and you had things going on that have greatly affected the human being. So it's something to look at. And we know this because the DNA suggests this. We also know this if you look at ancient books. Even the Bible tells you that the sons, the daughters of man laid down with other beings. So we know that even the Bible mentions that. Several books, historical books, mention theories of people laying with things and myths and things like that. So this is not something that is necessarily new to the collective, but to know that we have DNA evidence that suggests it. Eric, you're talking about the post from the Hamas leader's son. I haven't verified if that is a Hamas leader's son, but yes, I did post that. And I posted that because I, again, am watching people manipulate. It was what's that guy's name? Dr. Phil had a guy on saying that all Palestinians have to be a part of Hamas. Well, that's foolery, because these children obviously are not part of some kind of terrorist group, but they are the ones who are dying. But it goes along with an American conservative rhetoric that is used to divide people. And I if you look at that clip, I think I did put, I don't know if I put it on Erudition, but I know I put it on my Facebook page. You will see Dr. Phil looking uncomfortable in a way, but also smug, because you're having these people argue about a religion that you don't have any stake in, about a people who you don't have any stake in, and you're creating this fissure, this anger between people, because in the end of the day, people's mothers, sisters, and children, and fathers and brothers are all being killed, wasting away, while we debate on what is humane and what is not humane. The amount of people who were taken and killed in Israel, right, is now paling in comparison to the people who are dying with the desire to further violence. So I think that's the post that you were talking about. But I thank you for that question. Anybody else have a question? We got 6 people on here. Anybody got a question? Question. Come on, man. I'm sure somebody has something. If not, let me tell you something else that's getting ready to happen. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I finalized yesterday. I'm moving forward in my new book. If you did not get the first book, and yes, I am going to advertise and I am going to say, go out and get 101 Black History questions, early world. If you've gotten it, please let me know how you feel about the book. I've been asking people. I've been actually getting a lot of people from overseas and different things like that. There have been a couple of people who have purchased the book and have left comments, about 2 or 3. But I'm looking for more people, even some of the people that I know. If you don't like the book, let me know. If you love the book, let me know. But let me know something, right? So that I know. But anyway, we're getting ready to push out the book. Tina, there really is no issues with the book. Here's the thing. In episodes past, I have shown you all how to go in and download the ebook. I know everybody's not savvy. So I will say this. If you have a problem with how you bring the book over to your Kindle, if you have a problem of how you display it on your phone, if you have a problem on how you display it on your computer, contact us here, right? Contact us here. There's a reason why I'm going to do it that way. I don't want to go in and constantly show pages of this book that people haven't purchased, right? I think we've done that enough. But what I do want to do is I want to make sure that you understand that when you buy an ebook, you own that ebook. And however you display it, however you put it in there, it is yours. What I have found is that some of us, it's been a struggle on what program. If you're using Android or Windows, go to Google Play Store and get Google Play Books. If you are on an iPhone or iPad, all you really need to be able to do is click on that ebook file and it will open in your books program on iPhone or your iPad or your Mac. And there you go. And you will have that book to read. And it will be easier to do. And I hope that answers that question. But no, we're getting ready to put out another book that I am very excited about. I finalized the cover for it today. I'm probably about halfway through. I have all of the questions and everything else. But this book, I call myself trying to be a little clever. We're going to have 101 as the first book, 102 as the second book, 103 as the third book. I know, 1, 2, 3. But here's the thing. This book will cover the Middle Ages. And so you would do yourself a great service of you could get this book and not get the first book. However, I think it's beneficial for you to get 101 Black History Question Challenge and then go into 102 because it will take you right into the Middle Ages and the medieval times, and we will be able to discuss how Africans played a part in the shaping of Europe before the arrival of Columbus. And one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is this issue of us not knowing what part Africans played in the early structure of Europe. I believe that Mike asked about it. I believe it was Mike asked last week or so about the Moors. And we talked about how we briefly touched on how the Moors came into Europe and saved Europe from the Dark Ages. This question book will cover some of that. It will cover some of those cultures, the Songhai Empire, the Benin people. It will cover the Moors. It will talk about these different cultures, the Not culture, that put created were amazing iron workers. We talk a little bit about those things in early world, but in the Middle Ages, this becomes very important as we start talking um, about how lives were changed. Earlier today, I asked a question. I put a question out earlier today, which is what I do sometimes. And that question wasn't to trap anybody. The question was predominantly asked because I wanted you to think um, outside the box, right? I wanted you to, I wanted to judge and see um, what people thought, um, what they knew. Let's just put it that way. What they knew. I wanted us to start to have a better understanding of what Africans brought to the table. And so I asked this question. I'm going to try to bring this question up. That's what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen, about what the Moors and let me explain something to you. History will try to tell you that the Moors were an Islamic people, and they were. They were Islamic, but they were also African. They came out of Africa. And this is the old okey doke, right? This is the old okey doke to try to get you to not give credit to the African and say, oh, it's just a Middle Eastern thing. But if you read my first book, Early World, you will see how the migration path and how these cultures, the Carthaginians, the Numidians, the Oxumites, all of the Sheba, people of Sheba, how everybody influenced Eastern culture. You will also start to understand that this is a lie perpetuated over time to confuse and defuse the idea that blacks did anything of value in the world. And that's a problem. And one of the reasons why I keep saying, let's prioritize our history. Because I guarantee you there are things you don't know. I guarantee you there are things that you would be like, whoa, wait a minute. I always thought this was such and such. This is the question I asked earlier on one of my posts. What influential mathematical concept did the Moors introduce to European society? Let's put that question out there. You guys answer that, A, B, C, or D. What you think it is, just put the letter in there, and we'll see what the consensus is for the people who are on here tonight. What influential mathematical concept did the Moors introduce to European society? And I'm going to caveat a little hint here, call it a hint, is that this particular mathematical concept was essential for the Renaissance. Was essential for the Renaissance. Tell me what you think. Come on, y'all. Y'all can answer. You ain't got to do a lot of thought. If you don't know, you don't know. But if you know, you know. Yeah, anybody? Bueller. I know. Okay. Mike says C. Sean Anthony says D. Anybody else? Give me two more. If 5 of y'all on here, somebody can type a letter in. I'll give you even more of a hint. One of the two people who have already answered is correct. Now you split the decision. You split the decision on what you think it is. All right, y'all not playing with me tonight. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. I think that's all we're going to get. The answer is C. The answer is C. That is correct. Now, I don't know if y'all just knew that. And if you did, hey, please do me a favor and explain to me how the Fibonacci sequence influenced the Renaissance. Can anybody do that? We did talk about it a little bit. But how did the Fibonacci sequence influence the Renaissance? Anybody? That you don't know. I got you. I got you. I got you. So let me tell you what it is. The Fibonacci sequence is important because the Fibonacci sequence is where we get this idea in art and math and everything called the golden ratio, right? The sequence basically allows us to understand how the world works, right? The next numbers, right? It goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 12, 13, 21, 34. The sequence usually starts with a 0, right? And it's a number added onto another number, and it continues to grow. 1 plus 2 is 3. You get what I'm saying? So the idea is that the Fibonacci sequence shows that there is a direct correlation between numbers and how they increase. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5, right? 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on and so on and so on. Now, the Moors bought this idea, and history will tell you that the people of Islamic faith bought the idea. But that is not necessarily true. The African, it is part of African math, which we've talked about before. And if we look at plants, they do what is called the Fibonacci sequence and how their petals and things grow, right? The optimization of it shows us kind of how things grow, how they radiate, and how they bend toward a certain pattern. Again, it shows us the order in which a lot of life on earth, or I like to say the order of God, and how things are ordered. They're not just chaos. So it is a focal point of mathematics. It is something that you have to learn in mathematics. And so it is great to know that it is something that Africans brought to the table. It's just a simple question that's going to probably, maybe, I don't know, will go in the book and have me further explain. If you looked at my last book, you know that I will always go in and give you a further explanation. I'm not going to go too deep tonight, but I want you to understand why this is important in history, why we have it, where it came from, and how it plays into our concepts and into our lives, even today. The Renaissance was important. The Renaissance was a rebirth, right? The Renaissance could have never happened without the Moors. The Moors brought the knowledge of Timbuktu. The Moors brought the knowledge of Africa. The Berber people who are traveling, people who are part of the Moors, they traveled all over East and in Africa and into the East. They brought all of that knowledge into Europe. And unfortunately, what ended up happening is that we start to see that people hated them. They hated them. They hated them so much that they eventually had to get them out of Europe. They had to get them out of Italy, out of Spain. And so as we look at these things, we start to really get an understanding of just how important the Moors were to the Middle Ages. And let's even go so far as we talked about this a little bit last week with the Crusades. There's a reason why Africans to this day, I've showed you all video and footage of Africans to this day like to trace their Islamic roots more than their African roots. And there's also a reason why Islam spread so effectively in Africa. And it goes along with something that I saw that Pastor Razor wrote in his books, the Biblically Black and Blessed books, and Biblically Black and Blessed 2. And I think that it's something that we definitely need to talk about. The fact is, Africans were not as polytheistic as you think they were, right? They believed in God. They would have liked to believe in one God. It is one of the reasons why the acceptance of Allah, the acceptance of Christianity, was not a big stretch with them, because they understood that there was a higher power, God, and they wanted to believe that. And Islam, just like with Christianity, gave them the ability to associate what they already believed with God. That's what it is. And so when we look at that, the acceptance, right, of one God wasn't a big stretch for them. And Islamic religious leaders were able to convert a lot of Africans because of that belief, because of that understanding. And it should also be said that they didn't hate the Christian. They didn't hate the Jew. Let me say that again. They didn't hate the Christian, and they didn't hate the Jew. We have made these things to be an issue in modern times that they did not have an issue with. I remember being over in Bahrain. I was told by a Muslim brother, he said, we're taught to love the Christian. What they don't like is a hypocrite. What they don't like is someone who preaches a false doctrine. That is what is disliked. That is why we have issues. That is why we said it last week. They call America the great Satan, and they do all of these different things because they see us as hypocritical. How can you say you are a person of love when you are attacking other cultures, nations? That's what it was about. And, you know, it goes along with history that we've discussed, because I always like to try to tie it in. We talked about a couple of weeks ago Queen Nefertiti in the 14th century, right? And how Nefertiti and Akhenaten decided that they wanted to change the religious beliefs of Egypt to only worship the sun god, one God. It was easier for Africans to accept this type of mentality. It is us that continues to make these things complex. Right? And because we keep doing that, we keep causing dissension, hate, and problems. Let me add something else to the Middle Ages, because I'm not going to give you everything that's going to go in this book. But if I were to ask you, why did the Crusades happen? What would you say? Type in your first thought possible answer. If I asked you tonight, why did we have the Crusades? What would you say? Just a quick answer. Don't need to have a lot of thought. Just want you to think about it. Why did the Crusades happen? Teddy, you say religious heretics. Okay. Anybody else? You say the church wanted to force religion on people. Huh? Shout out, you say to take back the Holy Land. Okay. To establish religion. Let me tell you all something that is not actually covered a lot. The main reason that the Crusades were important to Europe was they waged a holy war. You guys are right in that. But the holy war wasn't just because they wanted to take back the Holy Land. It was also because they lacked knowledge. I'm going to say it again. They lacked knowledge. The Crusades, if you were to go and look at a map, and I want you to, you get a chance, I want you to go look at a map, and I want you to see how far the United Kingdom, Britain, right, is from the Middle East. It would take you hour upon hour, even in an aircraft, to get from the UK to the Middle East. If you took a ship and you sailed around through the Strait and through the Med and even went that way, it would take you, I believe at that last thought, it would take you, let's just say it'll take you months to navigate through those waters. But here's the thing, it was important for them to do it. Because why? Because they had seen what the Africans, Middle Easterners had brought to Europe. They had seen the knowledge or the magic that they brought, how they built their temples, how they built their mosques, how they influenced the constructions of temples and cathedrals, even in Europe. We need that knowledge. We need to take that knowledge. They're not as skilled in war as we are. We are the descendants of the great Roman Empire. We are now a church, and we are going to go wage war to take the knowledge back that we feel we have lost. So while we all talk about pushing the church's faith, that was very, very little of it. Proselytization was not really what it was about. It was the Muslim and African scholars and the conversions that they were doing in Africa and in the Middle East that were impressive to those in Europe who did not have that same knowledge. And they tell you that in their stories. They tell you that in their loose telling of history. I remember when the movie Robin Hood came out, and they were like, why is Morgan Freeman playing a Muslim, a black Muslim? And the woman, if you remember that movie, was calling him a witch, and there was a witch, this man, right? The understanding, right, of Morgan Freeman's character saying that he was supposed to kill this witch, this heretic, who was teaching a false religion using witchcraft. They tell you that even in their stories. But we have been given a different mentality. We have been given a different understanding of why it was important. Math, as we just talked about with the Fibonacci sequence. I've told you all before. I keep saying it, and I think it's important to say, even with the computer that I'm on right now, how all of that was taken from an African understanding. We don't talk about African math, but they took it. We know they took it. And we know that it was the Portuguese who also went over and associated themselves with the Muslim and Islamic people in Africa and brought a lot of that information into their kingdom, which is one of the reasons why they were the first to understand the value of slavery. And then pushing that understanding to the Spanish, who then wrote the Essential del Negro that basically contracted slavery of the African. We've talked in the past about deterministic chaos theory, strange attractors. We've talked about these things that Africans brought to the table, that understanding that they had. The point is that when you look at the Fibonacci sequence, when you look at the golden ratio, these are things that artists during the Renaissance used mathematically. We give so much credit to Da Vinci, but they learned these things. And where did this knowledge come from? But we're not taught that. We're not taught that. They called it all kinds of things because the church wanted to cover it. The Roman church wanted to cover it, but it was getting out to other people. They called it alchemy, geomancy. And then eventually they just called it mathematics, arithmetic, calculus, Boolean algebra. But that fractal and deterministic chaos theories and all of these things come from a culture who wanted to study. I tell you in my first book how we give so much credit to the Egyptian, but we forget that the Kushite was more in tune to how the stars were aligned, and they influenced both the Egyptian and the Mesopotamians. But we're not taught that. We can go and look in some of the areas in Africa and still see relics today of how they understood the universe. But if you ask, most credit is given to the European. I know it gets boring when you look at history and you say to yourself, oh my God, it does not include me. But I'm telling you, it includes you. They did believe they were conquerors, even in the doctrine today with the song lyrics such as I am more than a conqueror. The idea of conquering, of being, and we talked about this a little bit last week when I went into talking to you all about how things worked out in this world. Me and my sons, and I wasn't going to get into how much time I got, about 10 minutes. We were talking the other day, well, they were on their show the other day talking about war and weapons and things like that. And we were talking about how World War I influenced a lot of things, but World War I was based on an old belief that had come before during the times of Civil War, that had come from European War, had come from Napoleonistic War. And so they were still approaching war in the same way that they had done for centuries. And they didn't see it as being anything different. But wait a minute, they had worse weapons, right? So the imperialism that they had input on people, the idea of taking over and ruling and taking somebody's sovereignty, you know, like when they split up Africa, it became an issue because now you have Germany, France, Britain, America. Everybody had a nationalism. And if you don't know what nationalism is, right? It's what we do every day in America. It's a patriotism, right? America is the greatest place on the earth. Nobody else is greater than America. But nationalism also can be warped into something where you feel you have to prove that you are stronger than everybody else. The Romans had this problem. We are stronger. And then you start to push in something else, right? The nationalism becomes fascism in a way, because what you start to do is you start to put groups together. Well, everybody, the white people, the black people, the yellow people, right? That's our nation against your nation. And it becomes like football, like a team. Nationalism, imperialism descends into militarism. So now what you're doing is you're building weapons to make sure that your national pride, your imperialistic beliefs can be pushed on the smaller people and pull them in to your nation, sometimes as subjects, as servants. So now I have a national sense, now I have a military sense, and now I create alliances with people who are just about my size, because I don't have the power to go take them down. So what I do is I create these alliances. That's what happened in World War I. That's also what happened in Europe, as they were forcing the Moors out of Italy, out of Spain, and they waged a war. They made alliances. We've taken from them what we need. We are going to use that knowledge and influence, and we're going to take it into the new world, into the Americas. And how do we know that there are Americas? Because we know that Africans have sailed from the African coast over to the Americas. We have maps of the areas. And we're going to take the information from the African Phoenicians. We're going to take the information from these the people of Mali. We're going to take this information and we're going to go over to the Americas, and we're going to go looking for gold, power, influence. That's how history is working. That's why it's important that you join us on Thursday nights. That's why it's important that you share this program. That's why it's important that you go out and buy these books. I guarantee you, and it ain't, I think Mike said it last week, it ain't just because I wrote the book, but I guarantee you, you're going to learn something that you didn't know. I guarantee you that you're going to have some information that you didn't know, and that you're going to also have sources and things to grow your knowledge further. I enjoyed this episode, ladies and gentlemen, about 5 minutes outside of the hour, and I thank you all who joined us. I will leave the room for one more question if you have it. If you don't, that's fine. I'm not angry about that in any way. But I always want to make sure that we are What did you ask about Niger? Niger kicked out the colonial French settlers recently. There is now debate on the U.S. presence there. First off, let's look at something that's going on with the idea of Central Africa. If you don't know, I truly believe that we turn our back on Africa and we forget, right, that they split Africa up. We forget how badly they split Africa up. The idea of imperialism we just talked about is really what that's about. They split up these areas of Africa and they've owned them and they've mistreated them, right? There is a reason why in history we call it a scramble. It was a scramble for Africa. The French have owned and held parts of Africa since the 1800s. If you go back and you look between 1870s and say 1941, you will see that France, Belgium, Germany, Portugal, Spain, England, countries I just talked about, they went in and took these lands. And when you say, well, why did they do that? Because they knew what was in those lands. Because as I just talked about for the last hour, people like the Moors, the Berbers, and everything showed them the value of Africa. Now, they always want to protect what it is that they've taken and that they've stolen, that they've retained huge swaths of land. I think France has, next to England, had the most land. Right? And so there's a reason why Winston Churchill, after World War II, was like, this is the end of the British Empire. Because they felt that those lands were going to be taken from them. Most of the countries that you see, Nigeria, Chad, Mali, all of these different things, Liberia, Sudan, they split these areas up. They divided them based on ownership. So if America wants to argue about who owns what, let's remember that those borders, right, were created by Europeans. It was the Europeans who told these people, because before that, Africa was Africa. They didn't represent the cultures of Africa. They represented what they wanted to take, the value of the land. So when you go back, and if you want to learn more about it, go look at the 1800s when we were going through our Civil War, right? And racial problems. Go look at what the Europeans were doing in Africa. Go look up someone like David Livingstone, right? Go look at King Leopold II. Go look at Sir Henry Morton Stanley. Those are names that you need to go look up, and then you have a better understanding of how Niger, how this is a big issue, and why America wants to influence and Europeans want to influence what's still going on in Africa. Eric, I hope that answers some of your question. It's a deeper subject than we have time for tonight. In the 70s and 80s, there was a Back to Africa movement. Are your books about knowing thyself and going back to the motherland? Not necessarily. Even though I do believe in some of the ideas of Pan-Africanism, and I do believe in the idea of what has happened through the African diaspora, and I understand it, I do believe that we have to have an understanding of our connection with Africa. I'm not a Garvius. I'm not going to tell you that I'm a person that says go back to Africa. But what I will tell you is that we do need to support, as well as those, our brothers and sisters in Africa need to support us as we support them. I think that what has happened is there has been a delta created due to lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, lack of connection. And we find so many things that divide us that really bring us together. And what it really comes down to is a lack of historical understanding. When people are telling us that Africa, is a dark continent, when people are telling us that Africans don't have any value, when people are telling us that the Africa proposed nothing that changed the world, when we're told that everything about our past started with 1619, we have to start looking at our history. I'm going to put the link in here, ladies and gentlemen, for the first book. Please get the book. Get the book. Of Early World, 101 Questions. It will not give you everything. There's no book that I think can give you everything, but it will start you on your path. It will give you something to come to the interactives with and ask questions and grow knowledge. Eric, did I answer your question before I get ready to get out of here tonight? I definitely want to make sure that I'm answering you guys questions. Let me put some of these names in here because I realized that I mentioned a lot of names for you all, but I did not type them in here. People that you could go look up. David Livingston, who went over there to push religion. It really sucks when it tries to autocorrect. Sir Henry Stanley. And of course, King Leopold. Was a very evil man. The other person that we really need to get into a lesson on is we need to talk about Cecil Rhodes. We need to talk about Rhodes because you're starting to see a lot of white supremacists talk about Rhodesia and the idea of returning Rhodesia, which I find funny. But the whole Rhodes Scholar, Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, and understanding how all of that worked, what it meant to be a Rhodes Scholar, and who Cecil Rhodes was, and how the Boer War worked. We need to get into that history. But I want you to go. I put those names in here so you have something to reference, so you have somewhere to go. All right, so I did answer your question. Ladies and gentlemen, please share. If you're new to this program, if you watch the replay or whatever, hey, I hope you got something from tonight. The hour went really fast. I really do appreciate you all joining us at this later hour. I think I'm going to stay at this time because I think we get more people who are coming off work and maybe want to participate in the interactive. And I'm going to start to force us to be more interactive because I do believe that I need to ask these questions and I need to challenge our knowledge and we need to grow together. Thank you all, those of you who have purchased my first book, and I look forward to getting the second book out. Tit also has a book that's getting ready to come out. My wife, and you will see her advertising for that book predominantly on her program next week. I'll let her talk about it before we talk about it, and she'll get more into what she wants to offer for you for that book. But for me, trying to get these history books done is work, ladies and gentlemen. But we need it. We need it. We need it. We need it. If you're gaining something for it, send me a shout out so that I can put it in I haven't done any advertisement really on the book because I wanted to get the people who have already purchased it, see what they were saying about it, and get some of that feedback to put into our advertisement. So if you have gained something from the book, send it to me on Facebook, however you want to send it, even if it's in the interactive, and I will greatly appreciate it because I really want us to grow. All right, I'm out of here. I've said enough. Thank you all for your patience with me. I think Teddy turned on the clicker. You know, I never noticed this clicker. I never do. I appreciate my son doing it. If you want to support the Erudition Network, we do have a Cash App. It's $, the Erudition Network. Whatever you can provide helps us as we grow this program, buy equipment, build courses, do things that we need to do to create the books that we're doing. All of this stuff goes back into the things that we put out. Getting ready to get some new shirts and things like that coming up hopefully soon. So we want things to start moving as we start pushing our brand out here to gain more people to in pushing understanding and knowledge. All right, I've talked too much. I'm burned out. And the good thing is I got nothing else to do for the rest of the night. So I'm going to go relax. And I hope you do the same. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you be blessed. And God willing, we will see you here again next week at this same time, at this same channel. Until then, you be blessed. Thank you.